Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mountain Charlie Road Community Meeting. If you're just joining us right now, we're going to wait a couple of seconds to allow for more people to join this webinar. Good afternoon, everybody. Those of you just joining us right now for the Mountain Charlie Road Community Meeting, we're waiting several more seconds to give everyone the opportunity to join this meeting. So please bear with us as we wait for those of us or your neighbors to join us. Okay, I don't see anybody new joining us. So we're gonna go ahead and get this Mountain Charlie Road virtual meeting started. I'm Tiffany Martinez. We have in our panelists, we have Steve Wiesner, who is the Assistant Director of the Public Works Division. We have Matt Machado, who is the Director at Community Development and Infrastructure Department. We have Katie Beach, who is Project Manager and Engineer. And we also have Supervisor Bruce McPherson joining us here as one of our panelists. And Steve will begin presenting any updates regarding Mountain Charlie Road. But before we do so, I wanted to cover some of the rules of this webinar. So we do have a Q&A function enabled in the webinar. You'll find that at the bottom. There is a toolbar at the bottom where you can ask your questions. At the end of the presentation, you will be able to raise your hand and I will acknowledge you and let you know that you can unmute to ask your question. So we're addressing questions through the Q&A function and through the hand raising feature. You'll be able to ask one question each, but of course, if we get through all of the questions, you're more than welcome to raise your hand or continue asking questions. We just want to make sure that we address everyone's question in this meeting because we know there's a lot of questions regarding the temporary road. If there is a power outage, we will attempt to reconnect within 15 minutes. If we are unsuccessful with reconnecting due to the power outage, we'll send out a CruiseAware update for another meeting date so we can come back together and meet about this again and continue this meeting and answer all of your questions. And another thing is to also just be very respectful. We don't allow for any cursing or anything like that. If you are being disrespectful, we will have to remove you from the meeting. With that said, I'll have Steve Wiesner take it away with his presentation regarding the temporary road on Mountain Charlie Road.
Thank you, Tiffany, and good evening, everyone. We really appreciate your time tonight. I know there's been a lot of questions surrounding the temporary road that was recently constructed and opened. And so I'm going to start off with just hopefully a very brief PowerPoint slideshow, which just sort of memorializes the work that we did out there. Just remind everybody, this was an emergency contract, and it was done on a time and materials basis based on some design work that was done by some of the folks down here in Public Works, some of our engineering staff. And just to remind everybody that, you know, no way do we consider this a permanent repair. It's temporary in nature. You know, we're trying to bridge over, you know, a fairly active landslide that we all witnessed. And so, you know, we're hoping that this is going to last until we can get a more permanent solution out there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and begin this PowerPoint slideshow presentation. Hopefully I'll get some indications from some folks on the panel as to when they can see my screen.
Looks good.
You can see your screen.
Okay, great. And then I'll see if I can get this thing started so you can see that. So again, we're here to talk about Mount Charlie and the temporary road that was recently constructed. I'm just going to briefly go over sort of what the project entailed, a brief summary, and then what we did out there to actually construct the road with our contractor. And then I have a whole series of photos, and I'll go through them fairly quickly. There's a lot of them, but for those who didn't have the benefit of actually witnessing, you know, what happened out there, and we did this all, I think, in a sum total of about 4 to 5 weeks. It went fairly quickly. There was a big effort from our contractor and our engineering staff out there. And, you know, the main objective here was really to reinstate emergency and safety access. And we realized when a road like this gets severed, Getting emergency vehicles in and out of there, and just daily activity becomes very constrained. And so that was sort of the, that was the guiding beacon for us, was to restore access on Mount Charlie Road there. As stated before, it wasn't in our purview to rebuild the private driveway there. And so we didn't do that. It was mainly to provide public access and thoroughfare. The scope of the project was really to get out there and clean up the whole site. And I shared a lot of this with you at the last meeting as to what we had planned to do. And so this is really what we did. And to excavate and get rid of all that, the roadway material that, failed. And then to reprocess the soil there to see what we had, and to install some drainage, and then to start to bring some fill material in that we could mix with the existing material that was out there. And then really bring this thing back up to grade and try to provide as much surface drainage as we could. We do plan to put some gates out there for emergency closures should they be necessary. We haven't got those out there, they're being fabricated, but we did get the signage up there and there's stops and so forth. You all see that. So we had a commitment from our 5th district supervisor to allocate approximately $700,000 in Measure D funds to this project. And really what that translates to is about $500,000 worth of construction work out there, with our overhead and soft costs really bringing the total up. And we don't have all the invoices in yet, but we think it's going to be just shy of $700,000. We started on August 12th and we completed it, 5 to 6 weeks later on September 27th. We were able to get the roadway open on the 28th. And what the details of that really involved, and you'll see this in the pictures, of course, we had that big hole that was in the middle of the project. And so we had most of the utilities relocated out of the area before that, but we still had to work with the water company and also the comms company up there to get everything out of the way so we could move that pole, do the clearing, grubbing, remove any unsuitable material that we saw out there, and really process that material. It was actually very wet when the contractor started digging, even all the way into August. He described it to me as kind of peanut buttery, where it kind of smear around. It had a lot of moisture in it. And so what he really had to do is dig it all out and actually process it and windrow it a bit and kind of dry it out. And then bring it back in and start kind of blending it with some of the fill material. We did a fairly substantial amount of subsurface drainage. I'll show that in some pictures. And then as we brought it up, we began to reinforce the fill with geotechnical geogrid fabric as well. And that's really to help bridge that slide. We do expect it to move around a bit, and we think that the geogrid will really help with that. It'll help stabilize the road, even with a little bit of subsurface movement. And then, of course, we did surface drainage, and we put in a substantial culvert as well to hopefully capture as much of the surface drainage as possible. And then we brought the whole thing up, and I think the final grade was maybe 12 to 24 inches of class 2 base rock. And that's the way you see it today. And I know there's a lot of questions about that. Maybe I'll just address that now, and then I'll go on into the slideshow. One of the main reasons why we didn't put any type of hard surface on there is because we do expect this fill to move around, especially as we start to experience storm events. We expect that the fill will get saturated again, and this is a fairly active landslide in 24, and we found that bedrock was it was anywhere from like 12 to 30 feet down, and so we're really building on top of slide material, and that's really what, in essence, what we did. A road like this could last 30, 50 years. It could slip out in 1 year. And that's really just the God's honest truth. We can't predict what the winter's going to be. We've certainly provided as much, remediations for that type of an event as possible. But without a big wall out there, there's really no guarantees that's, socketed into bedrock. There's really no guarantees for us that this fill is going to stay put. So it really wouldn't make sense to go out there and put, like, say, a couple inches of asphalt today, only to see the fill move around. And even if it just moved around like 6 inches, all that asphalt would crack up, and it would just be horrible. It'd be almost impassable, right? Whereas if we see the fill move around 6 to 12 inches this winter, without a surface there, we actually have the opportunity to go back out there and regrade it. I think the likelihood that we lose the whole thing is low unless we get like another, 2023 type of winter. And if we get a winter like that, I'm just going to say all bets are off, and we'll just hope everybody's safe. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and continue on, and I will say, it does say pending construction items, which is erosion control. We do plan to do a little bit more surface erosion control in the form of like coir rolls and some hydro seeding, just to keep the slope from reeling too much. And then, like I said, we are presently fabricating the gates. And when those are done, we'll have the crew probably run up there and drop those in, hopefully in the next month or so. Okay, so just a couple of the details about what the road was. It's about 120 feet in length. It's a minimum 15 feet wide, but it's much wider in some spots, as you'll see. And the majority of the embankment is around a 2-to-1. You know, when it gets to the conforms, it's much steeper because, of course, that slope out there is very steep. But the majority of the slope is actually fairly shallow, which is really helpful for stability. And then we did a bunch of these chimney drains, and you'll get to see those. They're basically these blanket drains that we put in that get collected into a pipe that's subsurface in the fill. It's like a manifold system where it collects it in, and then we've got pipes that are exiting the embankment at the toe of the fill that we did. And then just some kind of numbers there under the materials category of the amount of material that we worked with and that we imported. Okay, so moving on. This is just going to be a series of photos, so just kind of bear with me, and hopefully you guys can see this on your screens. For those with phones, you probably can't see it that well, but this first picture is what it looked like in June when it had come to a rest, and it had dropped anywhere from 14 to 16 feet, depending upon where you were. And you can see both the driveway, obviously, and the road were completely destroyed. All right, so as the contractor mobilized and started to bring equipment out there and started to work some of that old asphalt out of the fill and clean it up and get it off hauled, and you can even see the old power poles sitting there in the middle. We were already working even before that pole was removed. And then just on and on, he's removing the old asphalt material there. And you can see he's starting to off-haul this material. Just more of this, it was at least a week of cleaning up. It might have been almost the better part of 2 weeks actually getting all that junk out of there. And then once he finally cleaned up the area and was able to get most of the man-made material out of the area, then he could really start to process the material. And this is when he started digging deep, and he started realizing this material is actually pretty bad material. And it had a lot of moisture in it. And so a lot of the digging entailed processing, turning over, and windrowing. And you can see this gigantic windrow here in the foreground of this picture, where he's trying to get the material to really dry out as he's working it. And then so you can see just more of the same. He brought in some of those concrete blocks to kind of like retain actually some of the windrowed material. They still exist out there today. You see those. And it kind of helped delineate where the old road was actually. But you can see the site start to shape up after a couple weeks. And you can start to get kind of a visualization as to, you know, what bridging this gap might look like. And so as he's processing the material and bringing it back in, it's still drying there in the background, you can see. As he got down to what we thought was a suitable bottom, this is when we started to put in what we call these chimney drains. So this is the bottom of the chimney drain, which is just basically like a gigantic French drain with textile fabric, drain rock, and then a pipe down at the bottom of that. And let's see if I get to the next photo. Yeah, you could start to see these chimney drains. Now, this is a wicking material that is used on a lot of retaining type structures that involved geotechnical engineering. And what really this is designed to do is to capture as much of the water that's moving through that mountain. And it's, you know, would eventually hit this fill that we're going to build. And really that was the one that we think is the main driver of this slide to begin with, was just the incredible amount of saturation and pour water pressure that was built up into the hillside there, which really caused this thing to slip. So the goal here, capture all the drainage, get it wicked down through these chimneys and into that trench that you saw, which basically is a manifold system that has pipes. And you can even see the one white pipe on the right there, which is sticking out of the slope. And there's several of those. If you go to the toe of the slope, you'll see those exit at the toe. And that's really what's going to hopefully drain and keep this fill from getting too saturated. And in addition, when they started getting up to the top of the grade, they found what they thought the low spot was. And you can see it's right below where the old driveway is severed. We do expect a fair amount of water to come off that driveway. And the hopes is then the intention is that this inlet will capture all that fill, all that drain up, drain runoff. And in addition, they canted the road, so they pitched the road back towards the hillside. So we expect that surface drainage will also collect on the inside there. Now, I know there was questions about the grate, and that it'll get clogged, and that, you know, and it's true that we do see up in the mountains, these grates do tend to fill up, and, you know, we'll be sending the road crews up there, you know, sort of before and after every storm, at least the significant ones, to try and clear it. But certainly if you're in the area and you see leaves and so forth, and, you know, we see this with a lot of our neighbors all throughout the mountains where they clear drains all the time, and we would encourage you all to take part in doing that. If you see there's a problem up there, certainly call us as well. Okay, and so yeah, you're seeing now the pipe sticking out of the slope there, and that's our culvert drain with the T energy dissipator there, and that's at the toe of the new fill. And this really gives you an idea of the type of compaction effort that went into this. We had a sheep's foot out there, and I will say we had a hard time getting really good compaction on the native material until we started blending it. And then once we did, we actually started seeing, like, you know, high 80s and low 90s on relative compaction numbers on the native fill material. We got much better as we started to bring in our fill. We were getting 95s and near 100s, like 98s. And I've been out there a couple times. That surface is really hard. So what you see on the right is the geotextile fabric now starting to come in. And, you know, just for reference, take a look at those chimney drains. You know, they're, I don't know, 6-8 feet up, and we're starting to put this geotextile fabric in. And we put that in on fairly low lifts, and I think it was like a 6 to 12 inch lifts with that fabric. So you see the fabric being installed now. And once again, they're running sheep's foot rollers here, gaining compaction over the fabric layers. And now you're really starting to see us come up to grade, and you're starting to see this whole thing start to take shape. And this is towards the end of construction. We're getting into, I guess this was a recent photo, September 23rd. So this was about a week before the road was opened. And then, of course, this is what it looks like today. And I know, again, there's been a lot of critique about no surface on this road. I will say the county does have several gravel dirt roads that it maintains throughout the county. And, you know, they do rut, you know, and they reel. But it's really, a road surface of this nature is not what's going to cause a road like this to fail. You know, we'll definitely get to see what happens when it starts raining. And if we need to make any adjustments moving into next spring and early next summer, we can. And really at that time, I think is the most appropriate time to consider putting some type of surface on here, whether that's asphalt or oil and screenings. You know, in my mind, if this thing hasn't moved around much when we come out of this next winter, you know, looking at like a 2-inch overlay here would be appropriate. I think that would definitely make it more serviceable for the community out there, and it would definitely help on the maintenance. But once again, if we had asphalt or some other type of surface out here and this thing started moving around, it would take quite a bit of effort to remove all that asphalt, regrade the road, and try to reopen it. And so this is the main reasons why we're recommending to leave it the way it is today. And let's see what happens this winter. Okay, so with that, I think this is getting towards the end of the show, and these are just more pictures about what the final grade looked like. We tried to put some delineators up there so people can navigate their way through the evenings. Those are reflective, and, you know, again, we posted for 5 miles an hour. We have stop signs at both ends. We really want to encourage everybody to drive as slowly as possible. And these are very recent photos. And so let me just leave this one up for a second and talk a little bit about the load limitations that are up there. I know that we had some questions about the 5-ton load limit and what was the rationale behind that. We've actually had those load limit signs up there for quite a few years, actually, and we just enhanced them. We replaced a couple missing elements to them, and then we put another set at Riva Ridge Road just to make sure that everybody getting into Mount Charlie could see that we do have these load limitations. The Green Waste Garbage Collection Company, they're not running any of their garbage trucks over this fill. I think garbage trucks by far would be like the heaviest type of loads that we would see run over Mount Charlie. Although, you know, heavy construction type of equipment or a big concrete loaded mixer, you know, these are heavily loaded types of vehicles. And we would ask that if you have any of those loads coming to your property, that you inform, you know, the drivers that to please not run over this. And so that if you live south of this area, please have those types of equipment running up from the south. And if you live north of this area, please inform the drivers to run from the north down. And I mean, it's really a bit of an honor system. There's really no way for us to enforce the loads. We don't have CHP up there on a regular basis. Obviously, there's no scales up there. And so this is really sort of a self-policing kind of a situation. And a 5-ton load limit, it's a very typical restriction that we would put on a road that we have concerns about, without getting too technical into the nature of, you know, what type of load is going to cause what section of this road to fail. It's a limitation that we use when we want folks to really treat our roads gingerly. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And I do have a couple more things I want to address before we start taking questions. So again, I really think that if we're going to consider putting any type of wearing surface on Mount Charlie Road at this location, that we should wait till we're solidly out of next winter. And so whether that's late next spring or early next summer, we've already had a few quotes for, you know, doing asphalt surfacing up there and these types of things. So we have an idea, it'd probably be 25 or 30 grand to do the work. While it does look like we're very close to the end of the Measure D funding that we use to build the temporary road, we do have some contingency funding that if we don't spend this winter, if we have a light winter, there might possibly be some of that available to use for a surfacing, you know, next spring or summer. Let's see. I talked a little bit about the load limitations and the fact that we're not working on the driveway, the private driveway. I know that those folks up there have been making arrangements on their own. And they've actually made some really good progress. I checked in with Amanda Watson a couple weeks ago, and I don't know if they have any plans to rebuild the driveway at this location, but they've made some alternate plans using another access point. And then there was a question about some orange paint just on the road, just in general, marking some of the undulations. And I actually noticed that when I was up there last time. And I don't really know who did that, honestly. Our crews wouldn't have done that. There are some bicycle communities out there who've been marking up our roads, trying to highlight some of the areas where there could be potholes and so forth. But I really don't know who did that. And so I think with that, unless anybody else on the panel has answers to questions they want to sort of predicate, you know, the chat, we could open it up to that. Or if anybody on the panel has questions themselves, we could start there. But if not, then I think it'd be totally appropriate to just move right along to our community. So thank you. We're happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Steve, for that presentation. It looks like we can move on to the questions from our community. The first question that we got was 5 homes still do not have reinstated emergency access due to the county's road failure, which took away our access driveway. This is not a convenience issue, it's a safety issue. Why isn't the county taking responsibility for helping reinstate emergency and utility access for these 5 homes?
You know, our charge was not to rebuild that private driveway, and you know, emergency funding that we get, or any type of road funding that we get for that matter, really can't be spent on private facilities. We still do, we're still aware, and we do anticipate that when the permanent design comes in, that we will definitely make room for that private road. And if the community wants to work with us to have their driveway rebuilt at that time, then I think that would be it would be like a joint project between us and the neighbors. And so that would be my answer to that question.
I think it's also worth mentioning that for clarity, that the landslide that took out the driveway and the county road started above both of us. So I think there's real clear evidence that a landslide took out both of these pieces of infrastructure.
Thank you, Steve and Matt. The second question we received, how many people worked on the temporary road during the 5 to 6 week period?
You know, we do have one of our construction experts here with us, and I don't know, Katie, I don't know if you have an exact number. I know the few times that I went out there, I saw probably a crew of about 4 people from the contractor. I don't know, Katie, do you have any?
Yeah, it varied between 4 and 7, depending on the operations. And that doesn't include all the truck drivers bringing in material and testing personnel.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Katie. Looks like we don't have any other questions related to the temporary road. If you have any questions, just a reminder, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. There should be a toolbar. You can also use the hand raising feature as well. Oh, okay, I see a few hands. Kathy, you should be able to unmute yourself now to ask your question.
Thank you so much. I actually wanted to start by thanking everyone. I mean, thank you, Supervisor McPherson, for making the funds available. We really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone in Department of Public Works. We were out there, we met with the contractors. I mean, they were really doing a great job. We're really thankful for all of that. Now, I don't know if the neighbor who potentially marked the lines on the road is online and will be speaking or not, but I know that some of our neighbors have been measuring new cracks that have been developing on the road close to the slide, and they've been measuring it since basically since a few weeks ago, and the cracks apparently have been getting deep pretty quickly. And I know they have been in communication with Department of Public Works, and that may be the markings that they put in, hoping that somebody from Department of Public Works could come in. And we want to know, as a community, what we can do, if there's any of these things that are potentially going to fail, if there's something we can do preventative to prevent these failures from happening, that would be great.
I'd be happy to try to answer that. I'm aware of some of those reports that have come in, and specifically Ken Garthrin has been really great about informing us of some of these things. And the one that's kind of forming recently and has gotten worse, and it probably was exacerbated by just the amount of hauling we did on the north end of the slide. And our crews will be addressing that in the next couple weeks. And also the crew's going to go up there. In fact, I'm meeting with them next week, and we're going to look at some of the areas just south of the slide as well, where the road's starting to kind of tip outboard, and just to try and contain as much of the drainage as possible. But Kathy, I think, we have a pretty active road dispatch. Happy to, the number is 831-477-3999. You can call that anytime, really, and report issues that you see out there. Of course, we know there's a lot of issues that have been going on for years out there, but if you see anything new that is concerning to you, please report it to our dispatch. Thank you.
Ken, you should now be able to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Great, thanks, Tiffany. Once again, just want to share Kathy's words. Huge thanks to Bruce, Supervisor Bruce McPherson, Steve, Matt, and Katie, and Tiffany for making this happen. And as a community, we are hugely thankful that we have an access and we can build on that. So relating to the permanent road, when do you feel that you want to start thinking about that? And do you have any thoughts on what it could be and where the funds may need to come from, and more importantly, how we can help you achieve that goal? And secondly, is the plan to take the temporary road completely out and put a new one, or are you going to build from what you've already achieved to get the permanent road? Thank you.
Those are great questions, Ken. Thank you. Yeah, we've been working actively with FEMA very recently. In fact, FEMA was up on this site just a couple weeks ago. And I think, as I've shared with this group, early on, we came up with what we thought was we're pretty far along, like a 50% design of what we think a retaining wall would look like there for a permanent repair. We're able to cost it out. And that's how we came up with that sort of like, the $3 to $5 million kind of number. Was from that preliminary design we did back in the late spring. And so we've presented this information to FEMA, and we don't have any indication from FEMA yet that they're going to deny this project. Now, it's got to go through the process, and it hasn't really made it to the decision makers yet. Where it is in the process is it's with the reviewers who review all the material that we submit, and they want to like dot all the I's, cross all the T's, make sure all the submittals look good before they pass it on to their review center. And that's where things are going to get really interesting. I think that's going to be in the next month or so here, maybe next month or two. We are actually trying to also get the temporary repair funded as well. And really, the best of all circumstances is we get the temporary repair funded, we get obligation for the permanent repair, and we're able to reimburse District 5 for the Measure D dollars that were spent. Now, we'll still need to search for a local match at that point, right? For the permanent repair, we have not identified that yet, and that'll be a challenge for us to do. But we're working really hard just to see and get the federal government to make a commitment. Now, to address your question as to whether that temporary road is going to have to come out, no, absolutely not. In fact, much of that temporary road, the way it sits today, will basically be situated into the new repair. And so we're not going to have to do a bunch of digging and off-hauling. We may have to reconfigure certainly the drainage, and then just, you know, how everything conforms into the hillside. And then, of course, if we have the community come forth and want to take part in rebuilding their driveway, then we'll have to look at all that too. So it'll look very different when we do implement the permanent repair, but we designed this thing so that much of it will actually stay in place, and then we'll be able to utilize it for permanent repair. Thank you.
Okay, Hugh, you should be able to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Yes, hello, and good evening, good afternoon. I'm interested to know if it's possible to bring donuts down to the offices and give you guys a little reward back. Maybe you like bagels, I don't know, but some fresh coffee, what can we do?
You know, if you ever want to come down to the Public Works Department here in Santa Cruz, I'd be happy to meet with you and shake your hand. Gifts are not necessary at all. Just hearing your voice and voice of appreciation is really enough for us. So thank you for that.
All right, well, maybe you like potato chips because nobody can resist them. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Okay. Moving on, I just want to address Emily's comment here that we will be posting updates regarding the roadway on our blog on Mountain Charlie Road webpage, but also, of course, if there's ever new construction that's happening on Mountain Charlie Road, we will share that information via CruiseAware. I did include a CruiseAware link in the chat. That way, if you haven't signed up, or if anybody attending this meeting hasn't signed up, I highly encourage you to do so. Apart from meetings about Mountain Charlie Road, you will get notified if there's ever an emergency communication that needs to go out from the county as well. So we will do our best to share any updates regarding the roadway, and then when we anticipate any future construction to happen again on Mountain Charlie Road as well. And then we do have another question. Michelle, would you consider putting gravel on the dirt road? It might improve with road traction and reduce surface water pooling, preventing a landslide.
My answer would be is that I think everything's under consideration, and there's nothing that we're taking off the table. So let's see how the road does, is what I would say. Let's take a look. It's quite likely that the base rock performs really well. I can totally understand that, it looks kind of slick out there, and that the desire to have some type of drain rock or some type of gravel. The problem at this point, if we put gravel on the road, and Katie, maybe you want to weigh in, but it might just create more of a mess than actually a better, friction surface. But yeah, Katie.
Yeah, I'll say when it's not confined, the gravel will kind of just wash away. So it's not always the best unless people are going very, very slow every trip through.
Thank you. We have a next question. Steve, what are your thoughts about erosion downhill from the slide? Do you anticipate we'll need erosion control?
So that's a great question. Thank you. We do have a contractor set up to do some erosion control on the slope itself. That'll involve some type of fiber rolls, and most likely like a hydroseeding of the slope. Now, again, these types of erosion installations, they're not going to prevent a whole hillside from coming down, but it will definitely keep the slope from reeling and rutting more than we want it to. And it's much more difficult to get on a slope and repair a slope than it is on a road surface. So I'm a little less concerned about the surface than I am the slope. So yeah, you'll see that. I think, Katie, isn't it scheduled for like within a week from now, something like that? And the next,
I believe it's on Thursday, the
okay,
23rd.
yes. Yeah, so in the next week or so, you'll see that go in. Thank you.
What is the status of FEMA funds for all the disasters, and how will those funds play into future plans? How will the county pay to maintain our roads going forward?
Well, thank you, Matt. I thought you might want to jump in on that.
Give you a break, Steve. We'll
Thank
give you a
you.
break. Well, I'll tell you that the FEMA response is slow in terms of obligation. We've gotten a few small ones, and I'll just refresh everybody's memory. From the 23 disasters, we delivered about 120 of those projects last year, and into this year, we spent upwards of almost $90 million on the disaster response and on the repair of those projects. And we've gotten very little obligation, meaning we've gotten really no money back on any of that. So we're really working to get those projects that we've already built obligated and reimbursed. And then, looking forward, there still are about 150 projects to go in this current budget cycle. About 60 of them were budgeted to continue to move forward slowly. And those are proceeding, but they're moving very slowly because without obligation, we really can't spend much money on them, certainly not construction money. So we think those projects that are in the budget today, about 60 of them, are going to take 3 to 4 budget cycles to get them built because of the pace that FEMA is obligating and reimbursing the county. There's still another 90 projects that haven't been addressed at all because we just don't have the local match to pursue them. And so those are going to take even longer than the 3 to 4 budget cycles. So we're many, many years out from seeing much of a change in terms of delivering projects. And it's really being driven by the FEMA reimbursement timing. Very, very slow. And so I think that's the status of the FEMA. Was there another piece to that question? Let me look here.
Are there, the one after that was, are there any other areas on Mountain Charlie Road that are at risk of a slide given all the movement along a few nearby spots?
That's a good question. I think you also asked if we were going to be able to maintain Mount Charlie. As we do with all of our roads in the county, we're doing our best. But it's worth noting that we did see a reduced budget for road maintenance this year. And so that's a problem. And so with less money, we're doing less maintenance, but we're trying to do our best and spread the maintenance dollars across the entire county. We do, try to keep our best eye on everything. If there's movement, we try to address it. If there's issues, we try to address them. We appreciate people's input. So as you're the best eyes out there. So if you see something, you can alert us, we can check it out. And we do that for all the roads in the county. But it's a definitely an uphill battle. I will point out that, we're looking for new opportunities to increase our revenue sources. And so there'll be more to come on that in the new year. And so we hope to garner everybody's support for that. So more to come. I won't say any more on that yet.
Thank you, Matt. Ali, you should be able to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Ali and Sean Miskelly here. I just want to say thank you to everybody who made this happen. It has been life-changing for us to have our road back.
Thank you.
So thank you guys. You made it happen, and you've got some really happy residents up here. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for the positive comments. We really appreciate that. Hugh, I see your hand up. You should be able to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Sorry. No questions.
Oh, okay. No worries. Diane, I see your hand up. You should be able to unmute yourself to ask your question.
This is Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
How do you do?
So I had a long chit chat today with Augie about the whole situation, and he said that those cracks have been there for a number of years. They moved a little bit, but not a lot with all of the dump trucks going across it. So that was good. It was good news to know that that was in his mind about that particular spot where those. The thing that most concerned me was I took a 6-foot level to the grade across the lower of those two culverts that you guys put in, and it's nearly level across. And if the lower culvert plugs, and there's a fair amount of water that comes off that broken driveway from up above, and I've looked at the collection area at about 4 acres, and that's a fair bit of water. And unfortunately, the people who live up there, you know, they've done what most people do, and so there's enough residual mud left over on that wall that with some leaves and other stuff, with the fine nature of that grading, that culvert could plug pretty easily. And it wouldn't take a lot of mud to fill there to kick that water out and toward the outside bank with all that fresh dirt. And so I think Steve can appreciate exactly what I just said. So I called that to your attention. I'm hoping something gets done about it. There's a bit of a berm that comes down from the top on the outside that keeps the water on the road. Maybe just continuing that berm down to where the end of the project is would be enough. But one thing for sure, you don't want to see any water going down that fresh. I don't think anybody disagrees. So, obviously, I'm really happy with what you guys did. It's certainly given us an option of escape if there's a fire or some other problem. And my take on this whole thing is to look at the long term and to see how much we can do to help you, which, as Steve knows, as I've done for a number of years. So I'm trying to do what I can to organize some of that. It was Daniel and I that made those markings on the street for those cracks and other such. And Daniel brought them up with Augie. And we also noticed, Steve, that there's that new capability of inputting data from that ends up on the GIS. And I really want to thank you guys for that, because I'm hoping to use that as a tool to help us organize cooperative efforts between us and the county, so that everybody knows what everybody else is doing or what the needs are. You know, if somebody's coming up with extra dirt, maybe there's a place to put it, you know, that kind of thing, right? And that we can end up making improvements at very, very little cost over a longer period of time. So
Absolutely.
you know, I'm glad to see this kind of cooperation with these Zoom meetings and such. And just hope this continues, and thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you,
We
Mark.
really we
Yeah.
appreciate the positive comments.
Yeah, and I just wanted to note, Mark, that we have read your emails. You know, they're really long, but there's some really good pearls of wisdom in there. And I just appreciate your advocacy for any type of improvements up to Mount Charlie Road. So thank you for all that. And your points are all well taken.
Why spend $700,000 when the rest of the road is crumbling and has had no maintenance over a lifetime?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an easy answer, right? That's so that you guys have emergency access. And this is really like helping, you know, in case something happens, as Mark just indicated, like, you know, God forbid we have some type of wildfire up there or something, but it's really about emergency access. In my mind, that's why we did this.
You know, can I just interrupt for a second? As a matter of fact, we just had a fire at Buena Vista, or out that way. I think we held it back, or the fire personnel held it back. It was 3 or 4 acres, but there was a lot of smoke. And so if you've seen that, that's what that was about today. And so, yeah, we're very concerned. And I just want to interrupt. I want to hear the questions and answers. First of all, I want to thank the Mount Charlie people for their patience and cooperation. this was a frustrating experience for all of us because it was a moving problem. We couldn't say, okay, this is what we want to do and how we're going to do it for how long and hope it holds. So I've never been through something quite like this, focused on one area in my 12 years on the board, or the like number in the state as well. So I just want to thank the residents and for your input of what you're having to say today, and for your along the way. This has been a long haul, and it's not over yet, but I just want to thank everybody, and I want to thank my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors too, because frankly, we took some money from other projects in the 5th district. You don't have to tell the rest of the district that, but to get this done. But this is literally a life and death issue, and they recognize that, and they followed our lead and said, yeah, okay, this has to be done. So I just want to thank a lot of people, starting with the residents and saying, okay, we understand there's a problem here and it can't be done overnight, but we're getting there, and it's and then also for the people here with Steve and Matt and Katie, it just have been phenomenal, and the work crew that has been there. It's been frustrating to wait as long as we had to, but really we did have to wait to see what project and what we were going to do. So and I think we're getting there, and I hope people are getting to school and to shops and whatever their needs are as conveniently as possible under the circumstances. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor McPherson. Just doing a time check, we do have about 13 minutes left. I did include the email for Mountain Charlie Road questions in case it comes to 6:30, we won't be able to address all the questions. You're more than welcome to email us. The Mountain Charlie questions email goes to all of us, so we'll be able to see any questions that you have and answer as quickly as we are able to. I see Leanna, your hand is up. You should be able to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say thank you again. You guys have had to hear a lot from us, and I'm sure it was frustrating for you guys as well as it was for us. This has been a thorn in all of our sides. So thank you guys. Like, you need to hear the good part too. Thank you so much thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for all the hours that you've put in. As a former East Coaster, I can tell you the day that there was a structure fire and I thought there was a fire on my right and the slide was on the left. I've never been that terrified in my life. I was scared to death. So when I've heard rumblings of, this being a convenience, and yeah, it has been inconvenient, but it truly, I will sleep better tonight, and I have every night since that the slide has been fixed. A mother of 2 little ones, I sleep better at night knowing that I have another option to get my children out. So I want to thank you for that, because this is first and foremost have always been about safety, and that day scared me to death. And I want to thank you all. Thank you, Katie, all of you guys, Tiffany, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much, Leanna. We're here to support, the entire residents, and we have been hearing you. We are listening to what you have to say when you attend the Board of Supervisors meeting. We've been talking about Mountain Charlie Road every single day since the slide happened, and we've been working as a team to get this temporary road up and running. So we do appreciate all the positive comments, but we're also happy that you're able to sleep better at night as well. We really want to make sure that you all feel that we are doing this for you as a community, as this provides an emergency road for everybody in case of an emergency like fire. Anyways, moving on to the next question. Gates are listed on the budget. What will be the criteria to reopen the road? Will there be early notice if they are closed, or if they will be closed? So I can answer to the early notice. When the gates are installed and we do have to close the road, I will notify everyone via Cruise Aware. So the moment that we know that the road is going to be closed, that way you can have that information ahead of time, which is why it's very important to sign up for Cruise Aware to receive those notifications. That way you're aware of the road closure, there will be signage, and I'm sure Steve can fill in on the other portions of that question as well. But as far as communication goes, we will share it on our webpage, on Cruise Aware. That way everyone is aware that that is happening.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. Yes, I think this is sort of like we're going to have to just adjust with ground conditions as far as closing the road. I think the criteria would be obviously safety, right? And so if we do start to see some movement out there and the movement like isn't just small and it starts to continue, then that could be a situation where we recommend to have the gates closed just to keep people off this thing. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is it fails overnight and somebody drives off in the dark or something like that. And so I think that could be a situation where we decide to implement gate closures. Obviously, it's not something we want to do, right? We don't want to be running up there, closing and opening up these gates. I could also see a situation where, let's say we get an atmospheric river forecast where we're going to get blasted with like 10 inches in one day, and it's like a real storm and it's really going to happen. This could be a situation that could cause some alarm for us too, just not knowing what's going to go on with the drainage up there and the road conditions. That could be a situation where we would also recommend to have the gates closed. I think in those types of situations, we give you as much notice as we possibly can. If it's a situation where we notice some type of a slip out there and we think there's a safety issue, associated with that, our crews would normally go up and close roads anyways, and they would do that with different types of barricades and signage. The gates will just allow us to very easily and quickly close it, knowing what we have here. So I think that's kind of the sort of what we're going to work with moving forward through this winter, and we'll just see how it goes. We're not going to willy-nilly just go out there and close it for no reason or for convenience of our road crews or anything like that.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, my comment is about the idea behind allowing the dirt to settle to avoid any further issues. But with heavy rains, can this be destabilized? Can this destabilize any progress that we have made? I think that's what they're trying to ask.
That's a good question. And if I understand what you're asking is wouldn't putting a surface on now actually, help alleviate any further movement or any type of movement out there? And we don't think so. Actually, having a gravel road out there, whether it's surfaced with asphalt or gravel or base rock, which is what we have, the road's going to move around, the fill's going to move around the way Mother Nature sort of has its way with us. And so what we're really trying to do is keep good work from getting destroyed. And if everything goes well, like I said, this winter, and we go out there with some minor grading, we could make the decision as early as say late spring or early summer next year to resurface it with something more substantial.
Emily, you should now be able to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you all very much. I know I've been a pain in the ass, but thank you all from the bottom of my heart. My second actual question is along the lines of if we have anticipated atmospheric rivers or things like that. I know when I look at the weather forecast, it'll say 2 inches in Los Gatos, but what we get along the ridge is something very different. Is there anything that we can or should do in terms of communicating with all of you about conditions up there when we anticipate maybe things might get a bit more than what we want folks driving on? That's it.
Gosh, that's a really good question, Emily. For sure, please keep us informed of anything you see that's going on out there. If you see any movement or anything suspicious, try to report it to our dispatch number there. And again, as Tiffany has explained, there's other ways to contact us through our DPW web, email. You can call the General Public Works phone. You can call our dispatch. The My Santa Cruz app, I don't know if, you guys have good cell connectivity up there, but that's something I don't know if we've mentioned here. That's another way to communicate with us. You can download the app and you can communicate with us that way. But I would say try to report any and all. And we do know that there's microclimates all over the Santa Cruz Mountains where you get all this crazy amounts of rain when it's only forecast for a couple inches, say down in Santa Cruz or Los Gatos. We're aware of that. And we're trying to track that as well. But I would just say that you're, like Matt had said, you know, you guys are really our eyes and ears up there. We have a crew of 8 to 12 people who basically patrol the entire North County from Highway 17 all the way out to Highway 1 and all the way up to Highway 35. They cover the entire San Lorenzo Valley and the entire North Coast, all the way up to San Mateo County. And so they can't be everywhere at once, right? And so for sure, we rely on you guys. And so please be active in reporting any issues you see out there, and you know, we'll try to respond as best as we can.
Thank you. I also added the webpage where you can report any issues with the roadway and our 24-hour service line that we do have as well. In case you see something at midnight, you're more than welcome to call that number. Just another time check. We do have 4 minutes left in this meeting. Ken, I still see your hand up, but I do have questions from the audience, from people who haven't asked yet. So I'm not ignoring you. It's just, I want to make sure we give everyone the opportunity to ask their question. The next question that we have is, my concern with closing the gates during an atmospheric river event is that no one will be able to monitor the new drain cover at 1.66. Can that be modified with either a larger grate or having the grate raised up, such as the culvert at 1.94, to allow leaves and mud to get down it and not clog it?
Katie, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you have something you wanted to say there?
Oh no, I've been unmuted, but
Okay. Okay.
you can go for it.
You know, we'll try to put the gates as close as we can to where that fill is. And I know that it could be a mucky mess when things get really bad out there. You know, we're hoping not to close the road as much as possible. And really, until we start seeing something really bad, and, you know, we don't get like 10 inches a day, like all the time. So I think in those cases where we do see something like that, the crews will be out on their regular patrol, and we'll be sure to send them up during those types of events. We'll be sure to send the crew up, you know, specifically to take a look at that grate and see if we're getting any overtopping. You know, I suspect we're going to see all kinds of crazy stuff this winter. And if we have to adjust, like I said, next year we'll consider putting a road surface on. That would be the time we could also consider modifying that grate to something else, should we see that being necessary as well. I think, you know, do your best to get out there. Certainly do not risk your lives. In a situation where we get an atmospheric river, I would ask everybody to shelter in place as best as possible. I mean, any kind of travel during those types of events are perilous, needless to say, right? And I know we've got to get to and from our homes for work and school and this and that, but when we start getting into these bigs, and you guys know, you get probably some of the heaviest rain we see in this county during these types of events. I really just encourage people to try to stay home, hunker down, and just be as safe as you possibly can. And then, you know, when the sky's clear a little bit, we can go check to see what's going on, but leave it to the road crews to do the type of clearing in those really inclement weather type of events. And if you see something that you can't get to, certainly call our dispatch and call our lines, and we'll get up there. And, you know, we've got specialized equipment and 4-wheel drive trucks and all that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. There's one comment from Robert. It says, please consider installing more reflective markers on Mount Charlie Road, particularly at the slide. It can get extremely foggy up here at times. So just something for consideration. And then there's one last question that I'll address. Will and can the road remain closed on GPS maps until the permanent fix? Waze, Google, Apple Maps, etc. Worry that the maps will show our road open as an alternate route for summer traffic or accidents on 17 and bring much traffic and extra weight. So, I mean, I can answer this one. My understanding with the GPS is that any commuter has the opportunity to report a road open or closed. So it would be really hard to have this as a permanent closure if other members are using any GPS like Waze, Google Maps, because they can report the road as open. And, you know, we have no control over what it shows on Waze and Google, unfortunately. But what we can do is just encourage that it only be used by local traffic. We can't restrict the road. It is a public road. But unfortunately, we can't have it as a permanent closure on any GPS programs or apps. Okay, with that, with 1 minute left, I just wanted to thank our panelists for attending this meeting and for providing their insights, and also to all of the community members that attended this meeting, and we hope we were able to answer your questions. I see a lot of really great responses and positive comments in the Q&A, so thank you for that. We really do appreciate it. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and we do love donuts, so it's not a requirement to bring us donuts. But as Eileen mentioned in the Q&A, we do love donuts. Anyways, I hope you all have a good evening, and feel free to ask us any questions using the Mountain Charlie Road questions@SantaCruzCountyCA.gov email address. I hope you all have a good evening. Bye.